I would like to thank the pastor, Pearson, for working with me, for having patience to listen, to meet with me, to make suggestions, to just be a good pastor. This morning, I would like to thank Deacon Roberts, Sister Annette Hall, Sister Esther Pearson, and Reverend Bobby Sledge. Thank you all. Everybody who participated so far. Deacon Kevin Pearson. When I think about a sermon, this is my second one, I have been directed to Matthew. I have been directed to, both times, Sermon on the Mount. For my trial sermon, I did a middle portion of the Sermon on the Mount. Today, I'm going to attempt to do the beginning. Now, Matthew 5-7 is called the Sermon on the Mount. And Jesus gave it on the hillside near Capernaum. The sermon probably covered several days of preaching. In it, Jesus proclaims his attitude toward the law, meaning the Old Testament law, and said that position, authority, and money are not important in his kingdom. What does matter is faithfulness, obedience from the heart. The Sermon on the Mount challenged the proud and legalistic religious leaders of that day. It called them back to the message of the Old Testament prophets. Now, the Greek word translated blessed means spiritual well-being and spiritual prosperity. It is to experience the approval and favor of God, to receive God's good gifts. This sermon describes how life is to be lived. It begins a description of a person who leads a successful life on God's terms and in God's kingdom. Now, Matthew 4:23 through 25 gives us an idea of what has gone on just before the sermon itself. At this point, Jesus had gone throughout Galilee. He had been in their synagogues preaching the good news of the kingdom and healing every disease and sickness among the people. News about him spread all over Syria, and people brought to him all who were ill with various diseases, those suffering severe pain, the demon-possessed, those having seizures, and the paralyzed. And he healed them. Large crowds from Galilee, the Decapolis, Jerusalem, Judah, and the regions across the Jordan followed him. Now, when I say Decapolis, that is where 10 different towns all sort of meet up together for protection and for trade, because they're sitting right on the Mediterranean Sea. Verse 1. Now, when he saw the crowds, he went up on a mountainside and sat down. His disciples came to him. Now, in that day, the speaker would always sit, and the audience mostly stood up. When it says that he now there are thousands of people there. When I think about this, I can see Jesus sitting down on the hillside. And I can see thousands of people crowding around him. And I can see these people, poor people, who are dirt farmers. I can see who have been oppressed for many, many years. I can see them wondering, who is this person? Who gave him the power to preach and to heal? What is he going to do next? Am I blessed? Maybe things will get better for us. Amen. These people are outside of their element. They are in Capernaum. Many of them have traveled great distances. But they're there to learn spiritual truths. And when I really sat down this week and thought about that, it made me wonder if that is why we're sitting here in church. Because we are out of our element. We are here to learn some spiritual truths. And hopefully, if everybody can leave here knowing one thing that they didn't know before they came here, then that's a good thing. Yeah. At home or in our own element, we are distracted. There are telephones, television, and computers, and work to do, and children to chase. And if we just get outside of our element, like coming to church, it helps us to sit down, relax, listen, learn, and hopefully serve better. Yeah. Now, what I would like you guys to do is to open your Bibles. I'd like you to hold them open for a while. So maybe you might want to just glance at the context just once in a while to get an idea of where I am and what's going on. Chapter 5, Matthew. Now, when I look at these Beatitudes, it's a list. It looks like a list. And it looks like poetry. And that is a definite reflection back onto the Old Testament. Not very much is written in the New Testament like this. And that's where the people's heads are, so to speak. That's what they know about. They know about the history from the Old Testament. But right now, I'm going to make a list. I'm going to make a list that would make me and probably make us feel like we may be blessed, or that we might be blessed. All right. Yes. Being wealthy, having good health, being secure and protected, have great success in one's endeavors, to be particularly good looking, athletic, charismatic, good friends, smart children, church support. Now, let's take a look at Jesus' list. This list that Jesus made is consistent of 8 Beatitudes. And I'm going to talk about them using 3 main categories: need, godliness, and persecution. Needlessness. Jesus' statement on being blessed is about God's kingdom. to experience the approval and favor of God and to receive God's good gifts. Verse 3. Blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. We may wonder how a person can be poor and at the same time be the recipient of God's blessing. The answer seems to lie in the way the poor are presented in the Old Testament. There we find many statements that God will act on behalf of the poor. Yes. At the same time, those who call on God for deliverance present themselves as poor and needy. Here is an example. In Psalms 70, verse 5 states, I am poor and needy. You are my deliverer. The point here is to recognize and admit to spiritual bankruptcy because of sin and to ask God to intervene. And if I were to paraphrase that, it would sound this way. Blessed are those who humbly recognize their need for God, for they will enter his kingdom. Verse 4. Blessed are those who mourn, for they will be comforted. The theme sounded in the first beatitude is repeated in the second. To be in mourning seemed to us the opposite of a blessing. Again, we need to understand the Old Testament to understand the statement. The people along the mountainside listening to Jesus that day were mostly farmers. In a good year, they were able to feed their families. And in a not so good year, they went hungry. No stop and shop around the corner. They lived constantly under the shame and threat of Rome's domination of their land and their possessions. Jesus spoke to their deep vulnerability as poor people. He didn't promise a political change, but a change in their heart. 6 centuries, this is just a little history, 6 centuries before Jesus delivered the Sermon on the Mount, the Babylonians destroyed Jerusalem. And the people were in exile for 70 years. Well, they were promised that they would be rescued, and they were. And they eventually went back to Jerusalem. But they remained weak. They never did get the strength back that they had before. So, Jesus' audience mourns then is ongoing exile conditions of the Jewish people. The loss that they grieve is the loss of nationhood. That means the loss of God's favor on them because of their sin. They sinned against God, like we were talking about in Sunday school this morning. They didn't worship God. They worshiped idol gods. They married with people outside of the Israeli race, and they went in many cases and worshiped the god of the wife or the husband. They did terrible things too, things that were unbecoming to Christian people. They were punished, which is why they were taken into captivity. Therefore, they're mourning, asking God for forgiveness. So, and to restore them. If I would paraphrase that at this point, it would look like this. Blessed are those that mourn for their sins, for they shall receive forgiveness and eternal life. Verse 5. Blessed are the meek, for they will inherit the earth. The promise we see here, like the two before it, obviously depends on God's action. Jesus' statement about the meek is not about a kind of personality. Rather, it is about a position that we voluntarily make. It is the people who submit to God as Lord. Revelations 21:7 states that he who overcomes will inherit all this, and I will be his God, and he will be my son. Paraphrased, that verse will sound like this. Blessed are those who submit to God as Lord, for they will be heirs to everything God possesses.
Amen. I like that. Yeah.
Verse 6. Blessed are those who hunger and thirst for righteousness, for they will be filled. The focus on people continues. Hunger and thirst remind Jesus' Jewish audience of their ancestors, experienced in the wilderness after God liberated them from slavery. Now, when God brought the slaves out of Egypt across the Red Sea, there was no food. Well, they didn't think they were in it. But God provided manna. He provided food for them. And he spoke to the rock, and the rock provided water for the people to drink. Yeah. So their needs were full, were fulfilled. In generations since, Israel has suffered times of drought and famine. Doubtless many in Jesus' audience know what it is to be hungry and to be thirsty. Remember, there's no grocery market. But there is something beyond ordinary hunger and thirst, of which Jesus speaks. Jesus had been tempted to provide food for himself in a miraculous way. But he didn't. But he did reply. He said in Matthew 4:4, man doesn't live on bread alone, but on every word that comes from the mouth of God. Paraphrase then, this verse would sound this way. Blessed are those who passionately long for the Lord, Jesus Christ, for he will satisfy their souls. Amen. The second category is godliness, and that is the next 3 verses. Blessed are the merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God's mercy has an implication. For those who receive it, they too must show mercy. James 2:13 says, judgment without mercy will be shown to anyone who has not been merciful. Now, when I thought about judgment, mercy triumphs over judgment. And many of us make judgments all the time on people.
Yes. Amen.
And one of the reasons I think we do that is because if we were to take sides with people in need, and people who are struggling, and people who may not be that terribly nice, it would imply that mercy is an implication that we accept the sin of someone else. But brothers and sisters, that is not our call.
Yes.
On judging and being judged, Matthew 7:3-5 says this. Why do you look at the speck of the sawdust in your brother's eye and pay no attention to the plank in your own eye? You are acting hypocritically. First, take the plank out of your own eye, and then you will see clearly to remove the speck from your brother's eye. And what that is saying is to look at yourself first before you start to judge somebody else. Paraphrase, that would look like this. Blessed are those who show mercy through forgiveness, kindness, and compassion, for with God. In God's kingdom, God rules both over things that can be seen and about all other things that only God alone can see. Men may judge by outside appearances, but God judges the heart. That came from 1 Samuel. The significance here is that the people who are following Jesus and us also continue to need mercy. Ultimately, the heart will be pure only because God will make them pure by his gracious power. The blessing is that the pure in heart will see God. Paraphrased then, it would sound this way. Blessed are those who have purified from the inside out, being made clean and holy, for they will see God. Verse 9. We're continuing with godliness. Blessed are the peacemakers, for they will be called sons of God. We have peace with God through Jesus Christ. Reconciliation through Jesus Christ brings restored fellowship with God. 2 Corinthians 5:19 and 20 says, God entrusts us with this same message of reconciliation to take to others. James tells us that if we draw near to God, he will draw near to us.
Yes.
Now, at the same time, brothers and sisters, we should not let ourselves become doormats for other people who are wrong. The great apostle Paul qualifies in Romans 12:18. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Paraphrased then, it would look like this. Blessed are those who have reconciled to God through Jesus Christ and who bring the same message to others. All those who have peace with God are called his sons. And I suspect that most of us, hopefully everyone, would want to be called a child of God.
Yes.
Do you know that you're blessed, St. John's?
Yes.
Do you?
Yes.
Now, we'll talk about persecution. Verses 10, 11, and 12, by the way, is one beatitude. Blessed are those who are persecuted because of righteousness, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. When people insult you, persecute you, and falsely say all kinds of evil against you because of me, rejoice and be glad, because great is your reward in heaven. For in the same way that they persecuted the prophets who were before you. Although we realize, sisters and brothers, the world doesn't change suddenly and dramatically. We do wonder, though, how those who pursue righteousness can be mistreated if God generally rules over his kingdom. God establishes his rule in the human heart, calling people into his kingdom with the good news of Jesus. Yet, evil remains active. In the presence of such a kingdom, Jesus said to rejoice when we're persecuted. Persecution can be good. It takes our eyes off earthly reward.
Say that.
It strips away superficial beliefs. It strengthens the faith of those who endure. Our attitude serves as an example to others who follow. It can be a comfort to know that God's greatest prophets were persecuted. Many of them were, but a few of them were Elijah, Jeremiah, Daniel, the major prophets, minor prophets, Amos, and Hosea. 1 Peter 3:14 follows with, even if you should suffer for what is right, you are blessed. Do not fear and do not be frightened. I sort of wanted this to reflect us a little bit more, real life. So I did a survey. And I asked 30 people, have you ever been persecuted? 29 of them said yes, and one said no. These 29 people said yes immediately. When I asked the question, have you ever persecuted someone else? One person said yes. Now, a couple of other people stopped to think about it and said, well, if I did, I didn't mean to, or I didn't intend on hurting anybody. So I enjoyed the survey, and I got enjoyment out of people's reactions and responses. And hopefully it sort of made us think a little bit about how we act, how we conduct ourselves, how we look in the eyes of other people, our friends, our relatives, our church associates. Therefore, paraphrased, it would look like this. Blessed are those daring enough to openly live for righteousness and suffer persecution, for they will receive the kingdom of heaven. Now, is it not for the fact that we are led in this life by the Lord Jesus, we could not begin to undertake it. But they